Fahrenheit, we're at 180,018 miles on the speedometer. It's about 82 degrees Fahrenheit, but probably it's, I don't know, it's probably 80 degrees out right now. The time is only 7:35, and we are dealing with a Tuesday. And I'm gonna check the time, the date here, which is the 20th. Let's see what the 20th right here. And welcome to the Please Subscribe show, soon to be Actor's Life with Cole Spivey. And I was going to show you the map, probably will. Alright, so I had to get things situated because this doesn't give the date, it only gives the time. Anyway, 7:37 in the AM, as in the anti-meridian. And we're headed to the Dallas area. And you know, the thing about Linda is she surprises me. Linda surprises me. I think she's gotten better. And this has been a long time for her. Alcoholism, and I know a few alcoholics. Like, for example, here in Fort Worth, I worked with a mime. He was a teacher of mine, Texas Wesleyan University. He had a theater out at Oak, I think it's called Oak Acres. It's Hip Pocket Theater, Johnny Simons. He's a great mime, he's a great artist, but I've never seen him ever out in the theater without a beer in his hand. And you know, he usually only would bring like a 6-pack. So I didn't really ever see him with like a case of beer, but I think at times he'd have it out there. He was Navy, he was a Navy guy that was in the Navy and took mime and dance to help his polio. What's interesting about polio is it actually spreads to different parts of the body, even the lungs. And even when you get older, when the polio gets to your lungs, you can no longer breathe. So I'm sure that now he probably doesn't drink any beer at all. And I hope he doesn't. And I know a few alcoholics. For example, I don't want to get into all the alcoholics I know, but I know about them. And you can kind of feel their energy. And sometimes even, you can kind of feel, in a way, in a distant, kind of weird way, you can almost feel kind of like what they're thinking. There's a sense of hatred that's connected with alcoholism. It's a deep, deep hatred. And it does say in the Bible that it is a blessing to have a glass of wine, but it is a complete curse to be drunk. And you are damned to go to hell if you're a drunkard. It does say that in the Bible. I'll be drinking tea today, so we're just having tea. But I do pray for all those people. I'd like for people to pray for Johnny Simons because these are his last days. My days are tough because of the boomer generation. A lot of the guys that are Generation X, they're laughed at by the boomers because the boomers are kind of sucking down all the Social Security. You know, what we have left on the reserve. We have to struggle as Generation X. So you see guys that have shows like Adam the Woo and Jordan the Lion and people like that. They have shows that are a response to the boomer generation. You know, we were responding to a generation that outnumbers us and also that will outdie us. Okay, and what I mean is that many of them are going to be dying in the next 5 years, even the next 10 years. Many boomers won't make it into their 90s. Most boomers now have just now made it into their 80s. Or they're like in their mid-70s, or they're working on being in their mid-70s, which is very hard for them because this is the time where they wake up in the morning and they realize, I'm not going to live much longer, right? I have a show on YouTube. This is a real show that you're watching. And I've dreamed my entire life to have my own show. My entire life I've dreamed it. And it's not easy. We live in a generation has more hatred than the Vietnam generation. Most of the soldiers that went over and fought the 20-year war in Afghan or Sunni Triangle, or however long, sometimes they say it's a 30-year war or whatever the length of the war is that you want it to be, they don't even understand why they went over there. They understood they went to a very hot place with no air conditioning always. They went into the desert and they fought this invisible enemy this thing called terrorism. Well, you know, terrorism exists among us today because of money. The boomer generation have been terrorizing the Generation X with their reserve of money. We have been terrorized since far before September 11th. I remember the terror of the boomer generation coming out of like the early 90s going into the mid 90s, of asking myself, what am I going to be? How am I going to survive as an actor? And I had to listen to these nuts that were consumed with a generation that was lost. Not only because of LSD, but because of other drugs and the way that they behave. What are they going to do for eternity? What's the boomer generation going to do for eternity? They're not going to be here forever. I may have discomfort, but I'm not going to have discomfort like you. When the boomer generation starts to become on hospice, right? They're going to start to become on hospice, and it's going to be a different type of discomfort that they're going to have, as opposed to discomfort that they're giving us and Generation X. What it means, guys, they're going to have to die. It's a fact of life. It's a way life is. It's not easy. I'd rather struggle to an immense level than to be in their shoes any day. I wake up every day and I thank God that I'm not in their shoes. This is a huge generation that's going to fall off the side of a cliff only because of gravity. Because they got old, and they fought against gravity, and gravity won. Back there is a silver alert. I didn't get it. It's something Floraville, Texas or something. Silver alert means that one of the hippie generation people now jumped into a car and just started driving. That means one of the boomer generation that's too old to drive, because a lot of the boomer generation are no longer going to be able to drive, and that's going to help us. That's going to help us immensely. You're going to find out that traffic is going to be very different in the next 5 years, because many of the boomers can no longer get on the road. And a silver alert says that this person's too old, thus they are a danger to be on the road. Because they can't always, they can't always function as a driver. And they can't always see correctly. And so they do not need to be on the road. Like I said, in my show, which I plan to make more clear, I'm not going to lie to you. Okay? I'm not going to stand in front of Disney World with a big smile on my face with some escort lady like Daphne and lie to you. I'm not going to do that. I have a real beloved wife that I care for. But let me explain something about the boomer generation and divorce, because I want to talk about divorce. When they asked Jesus Christ, they said, Messiah, talk to us about divorce. He responded with marriage, but now I respond just as Jesus Christ to the boomer generation about divorce, and I talk about what they're going to go through. It's divorce. Because all marriages end in divorce when the husband dies or when the wife dies. And they usually don't die at the same time. See, my father's marriage ends in divorce. So what's going to happen when my father dies is he may not call it, he won't be able to call it anything because he'll be in a coffin. But what they'll call my stepmom is a widow. And if you look up in the dictionary what a widow means, it means a woman without a man. That's what a widow means. Your marriage in the boomer generation, because you're a senior citizen, is going to end in divorce. Because the spouse or the wife will become a widow in many cases, because the woman outlives the man in many cases. That's how I respond to your marriage. I respond with divorce, because I'm not going to lie to you. Your marriage ends in divorce, because when you die, you won't have your wife there. She will become what's known as a widow. She will no longer be a wife. She will be a widow. That's reality. That's my show. Your marriage ended in divorce. You had a wonderful marriage for all your time, but you died. And your wife is now a widow. You don't call it divorce. You don't call it anything because you don't have brainwave activity anymore when you're dead. You can't think about it. You don't get to think about it anymore. All you know now, because you still have a few more breaths, you'll breathe a little bit longer, but all you know now is that what's going to happen to my wife when I die? Well, allow me to explain to you the truth. Your wife becomes a widow. And technically, scientifically, you are no longer married. When you died, you got your final divorce from your wife, who is now a widow. Now, if the wife dies, then you get to be a lonely old man with a ring on your finger when your wife is already dead. It could be either or. And that's still a divorce. I just want to explain that to you because that's the reality. Because if you're not together and your wife is in the ground, then you're divorced. If the husband is no longer alive, the wife becomes a widow, which means technically you're divorced. So welcome. Now I want to talk about Martin Luther because Martin Luther divorced the Catholic Church. He separated and divorced the Catholic Church and started what's known as the Protestant Reformation. So since you are now divorced, devote the last few seconds of your life to Jesus Christ, to spread the word of the gospel before you take your last breath and no longer live. You should have done it 20 years ago. You should have done it 30 years ago. But you wanted to enjoy your marriage, which was always headed to a cliff. Your marriage was always headed to a cliff of disaster and death. So if you're a wife, prepare to be a widow. I'm talking mostly the boomer generation. If you're the husband, prepare to be without your wife. And you'll find that secretly you've been a bride all along, awaiting the Messiah to return, to take you into the marriage of eternity, where you probably won't even see your wife or husband. Because I've been told by other Christians that we won't know each other like we know each other in the flesh on this planet. That it'll be a different world once we're with the Messiah. Have you ever been told that before? Well, I've talked to Christians that have studied seminary for a long time. So what I'm trying to say is that your life here is no longer worthy. You're already dead. Prepare for it. If you're a boomer generation, prepare for death. Because you're not going to live much longer. Hey, it's not me that's going to come after you. It's not them. They're not going to come after you. It's not a specific person that's going to come after you in your life. It's gravity. It's what you've been fighting your entire life. It's going to get you. You're not going to get out of this place alive. Nobody is. So if you're a boomer, you do need to listen. Because your life is over.
Silver alert, May Toyota, Avalon, Floresville, Texas.
That's what it says right there. I'm trying to get the back side of the sign so I get information. Yeah, there's another one coming up over this way. Silver alert, Floresville, Texas. License plate TXL. Call police. That means an old person's on the road. A boomer, a hippie generation person's on the road, flipping down the last bit of LSD. TXL, LMVW or something like that. I couldn't get it all, but anyway, they're a danger to others. Silver alert, Toyota Avalon, Floresville, Texas. Call police. Texas license LMW 0924. That old person's a danger to themselves and others. They're in a vehicle and they have got gray hair. They can't see while they're driving. They went through the hippie generation, so they probably got a lot of LSD in their system, and they need to be taken off the street immediately. Who knows why they would jump in a car and drive off like that? A bunch of hippies will. You won't see that with Generation X, though. That won't happen with Generation X. See, what happens with an old person is they panic, and they get in their car, and they just drive. That's called a silver alert. I wrote about it in Silver Alert Kitty. Yeah, I published it on Facebook. I'm trying to find a way to get it back onto what's called Fiction Press. The last few posts I did on Fiction Press, half of it's in code. So I have to do copy and paste only on the Fiction Press stuff. And sorry about that. I know I went through it the other day and looked at it. And what I did was I probably uploaded a document rather than put it in code, or it was hacked. So I don't know. I don't think it was hacked. But I need to copy and paste it, which is what I didn't do. Instead, what I did was I think I put it in just Word document, and I just uploaded it through a document, and it doesn't read it right on Fiction Press. Fiction Press is very sensitive because you can copy and paste. You gotta know about Fiction Press as a writer, because that's who I write for, Fiction Press, and I also write for fan fiction, but mostly I post now on fictionpress.com.
The generation, or what we'll say the boomer generation, created what was known as the Marines. They're no longer around. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. I got rid of all of the military. That's a battering ram that killer has right there, or his wife, on the truck. Now we're going to be doing a vlog here pretty soon here about Chris Kyle and Chad Littlefield. Now you got many killers on the road today because of the war, and they will battle ram your car and hurt you and your family if they don't learn discipline and listen to their leader. See how fearful he is back there? That's because he's not a Marine. They don't exist anymore.
So we are picking some tires up. We're not going to be worried about Waze anymore. So Waze was a major problem in the past, and I decided to switch over to Apple. So this is delivery, and that's pretty much what I'll be calling it. And that's all you need to know. Okay. So when it comes to me actually working for a brand name, that's only going to benefit the boomers. Me talking about brands. Generation X doesn't worry about brands. Okay? So I'm going to a tire place to deliver something. Just know that. It's about 1.9 miles. I'll be there in 5 minutes. We'll arrive at 8:52. I'm using Apple Maps. Alright, this is where we pick up the delivery. Delivery is actually going to a Generation Xer, but it's going to cost them their grandparents' life. So, hope you enjoyed your military. So the boomers get to laugh because they watch my show, but when they're put on hospice, I'm going to be eating a steak. So remember that when you're on hospice. I'll be eating steak potatoes with iced tea going. All right. So we're going to deliver your 4 tires. And we'll find out how healthy you tip depending on how white trash you are. But anyway, your tires are coming to you. It's going to be 12 miles. We'll be there in 20 minutes. We'll arrive to drop off your tires at 9:25 in the AM. Sorry, anti-meridian in the AM. So we switched hours. All right, we're on our way. I love the smell of fresh truck tires in the morning. Smells like victory. That smell, that rubber smell, smells like victory. You notice in my early work and Once in a Lifetime and the series of the short film too that we did For Now Until Morning, there was a green folder sitting right about like that. It reflected off the window. Pretty interesting, huh? How God speaks, because I don't make these videos, God does. God is the one that makes all this. I don't make any of it. And they're all the way from Florida. The truck right there. This is where they make all the oranges. Florida. I'm trying to prove it to you. Brought me all the way to Louisville. Need some shocks on that thing. Get them off the road as soon as possible. I see. So we're going from one discount tire to another. Now it makes a lot of sense. I was wondering, it's just the map, it said Farm 407, and I was thinking, this is it. 1901. Yep, this is correct. All right, we're going to drop the tires off to another business. So they work from business to business. This is like a go-between for businesses. So I'll let them know. Probably about right here. Boy, let me tell you something about this one. They love that commercial music. They're going to have to stop playing. There's your GD delivery. Sounds of Louisville concert series is every Tuesday night, June and July. So if you go here, you'll be able to hear the concerts, or I guess they're classical concerts. I don't know exactly what type. They don't say, but musical concerts. All right, this is the Louisville Theater, one of them, right next to where I used to live. And they're still going. They're doing If Then, June through July. I haven't heard of If Then. I'll have to look it up. It looks like something interesting. And this is their small little... I was going to come over here when I lived at the Mansions at Sunset Ridge and audition at that theater. But because of the Canadians complaining next door to us about noise, and they're still there too. They're a retired couple, and I hope they're living in peace, perfect silence for the rest of their life, which is cold and hard and evil. But I hope they have their perfect silence for all of time. And they need to stop grilling on the patio grill too. That's illegal too. Hopefully they'll get kicked out for that and go back to Canada and freeze. So If Then is a musical by Brian Yorkie. Looks pretty cool. Then talks about, basically what If Then is it's about a 38-year-old woman named Elizabeth who moves back to New York City to start over. So it's a play, a musical about starting over. So she's 38 years old. She goes back to New York City. Okay, let me try to, for the English major and other listening. She's 38 years old. She moves back to New York City to start over. And it's a musical. And the character's name in it, the protagonist, her name is Elizabeth. Those are two ex-state troopers, 0690 and 09460. They no longer have their jobs. All right, we have another pickup. It's gonna go 14 miles. We'll be there in 19 minutes at 10:33. We might be okay with these two. So it'll be a little bit different. Rather than doing 4, we might be okay with doing 2 or 3. But I don't understand. Oh, there we go. Now it's turned in the right direction. Okay. All Pastor J. Josh Smith talks about from MacArthur Boulevard Baptist Church is money. He doesn't talk about anything else. He never talks about Jesus. He only talks about money. This is my message to J. Josh Smith and Andrea, his ex-wife, because they will be divorced, and to Josh Smith's children, to all his children, his 4 girls and a boy. Now, because I know she faked the cancer. Now, this is what I want to say to Josh Smith. Now, Josh likes to get up in front of the church and say, well, these 2 couples over here have sinned, so I am spotlighting their sin, right? Because we're coming with the law for you, Josh Smith, and to put you in handcuffs in front of the church. But let me explain something to you first. Okay? Let me explain something to you. Why don't you go in front of your church body and tell the church body that I am going to burn in hell, right? Why don't you tell them that I, Josh Smith, will burn in hell? That's what you should tell them. You should tell them, Josh, that you are going to burn in hell. Tell the church that. God might save you, because here's the thing, the church can't save you because they're fooled by you. You owe me money, you're going to prison. See, the app that I'm using is from Georgia, and Josh Smith is a minister in Georgia, and Bogart, Georgia, at Prince Avenue Baptist Church. That's where he ran and hid after he drew out $5 million to expand a church that would only cost $100,000 to expand. That's $4 million that he gets to impress Andrea with and take all the kids to Disney World, huh? We know you embezzled, and embezzlement's a very, very serious crime in America. There's actually a pastor in Florida that's already gone to prison over it. About the same amount, too. He went to prison over $5 million. And that's where you're going, Josh Smith, for embezzling $4 million from MacArthur Boulevard Baptist to impress your ugly wife, who has cancer and will hopefully die. Eventually, they're coming for you, Josh. Look. That's what they're going to smell like. Bye.